In this video, I will be reviewing A Plague Tale: Requiem, covering its visual presentation, narrative, and gameplay. I will say up front that I highly recommend this game, especially for those who are a fan of the original, highly regarded 2019 release, A Plague Tale: Innocence. For those fans, there is one thing though. While I still stand by my recommendation, Requiem is a familiar yet different game than the first, and may leave you questioning which one you enjoyed more by its conclusion, but more on that later. For newcomers curious if they need to play the first game, Innocence, in order to understand this one, I will answer that with a mostly yes. While Requiem doesn't make frequent or heavy references to the first game, it does assume you are familiar with the events that transpired, and, most importantly, that you understand the relationship between siblings, as that continues to be a core focus of this game. First up, let's talk visual presentation.
I think we can call it home.
Yes. Home. I haven't said that word in a while.
In every facet of the game, Requiem sets out to aim higher than its predecessor, and the visuals certainly accomplish that. My playthrough was on the Xbox Series X, and the visuals are an immediate upgrade over the original. More robust character models and details on objects, such as armor and fabric materials, stand out. The game boasts several scenic vistas, with sweeping mountains and landscapes in the background that really give depth and scale to the environment in ways the original did not. I was impressed by the density and lushness of foliage when stealthily moving through it, as well as by scenes of water crashing at sea with the sun beaming in the backdrop. The developers behind A Plague Tale: Requiem know they've created a beautiful game and don't stop reminding you of it.
Let's go. We're not here to enjoy the view.
From a technical standpoint, unlike the first game, Requiem does not support an option for 60 FPS on console, at least at this time, so you are stuck with a 30 FPS experience. While personally I would prefer the option for 60 FPS to exist, say with a downgrade to the game's resolution, I honestly was not too bothered by the default frame rate. The game's visuals are such an improvement over the originals that I figured something would have to give as a trade-off. However, the game is paced slowly and methodically enough such that a 30 FPS target actually suits it rather well. Before moving on from the visuals, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the rats, and they have arrived bigger and better. While their general function and AI hasn't changed much, their quantity on screen definitely has. While Innocence has been reported as displaying upwards of 5,000 rats on screen at once, Requiem manages to boast over 300,000. This leads to some truly terrifying moments of literal rat tsunamis crashing through areas, destroying everything in their path while you attempt to make safe passage through them. If you thought the waves of rats in Innocence were bad enough, you are in for a treat on this one. Now, let's talk about the game's narrative. No spoilers, so don't worry. Requiem is set in medieval France during the 14th century and follows siblings Amicia and Hugo, who are on a quest to find a cure for Hugo's blood disease, a disease which seems connected to the appearance of rats spreading the Black Plague wherever he is found. A Plague Tale: Requiem continues where Innocence left off, picking up 6 months later. Amicia and Hugo have been living peacefully without any of the ill effects of his blood condition, known as the macula. Along with their mother and friend, they head for the French city of Provence, seeking refuge from a group of alchemists known as the Order. After a situation arises in which Hugo saves his family's life, he ends up weakened, and an attempt to treat him is made by a representative of the Order to no success. During this time, he has a recurring dream of visiting an unknown mysterious island, believing its mysteries will cure his macula once and for all. In light of the failed treatment, the Order representative arranges for the family to leave town by boat and head for the Order's headquarters. Unfortunately, danger ensues, and after a change of plans, the group decides to go on a journey to locate this island in Hugo's dreams. So, is the narrative any good? Yes, but I think it depends on where you're coming from. If Requiem is the first entry you're playing, then yes, I do think you'll walk away from it with positive memories. As for me, I played through Innocence back in 2020, and being able to compare how that game handled narrative to Requiem, I'd say that Innocence wins in comparison in this area. It's not that the narrative in Requiem is just plain bad or anything, or for example, that the cinematic scenes aren't staged well, or the voice acting delivery isn't well performed. The production value of Requiem is clearly on a higher plane than Innocence in this regard. The performance by the voice actor behind Amicia in particular is great. Her personal struggles, as well as the protectiveness she has for her brother, and her attitude of pushing through any and all obstacles to see him healed, can be felt in all of her lines.
I don't give a damn about your order! I don't know you, I don't work for you! Let me see him!
Hugo is tired, Amicia. You can't enter his room in your state.
Let me pass!
Not until you've calmed down. You said it yourself. The macula feeds on his emotion.
Ah!
It's more that Innocence was more tight and focused with its narrative, whereas Requiem goes in the direction of subjectively growing too grand in scale for its own good and ends up losing that focus. What began as a story about a young boy with extraordinary yet dangerous abilities turns into a plot involving dream visions, prophecy, and human sacrifices. I won't spoil how the plot turns out, but it left me with the feeling that I wasn't quite pleased with the direction it took. It's not that it couldn't have went in the direction that it did, it's just that it felt more out of left field territory than a steady trail of breadcrumbs that led up to this point. Also, as you proceed through the game, the importance of the game's setting in France during the times of the Inquisition seems all but abandoned as the game transports you to other locales. I would have preferred for it to lean more into its historical setting, or at the very least try to strike a better balance between the historical and fantastical elements.
Come, I'll give you what you want!
He has a shield! Careful!
Ah! How'd you like that, huh? When someone fights back!
There are too many!
As for the gameplay, much is improved here, although there are issues which I'll touch on later. The gameplay will feel familiar to those coming from Innocence, in that stealth segments mixed with combat segments are still the bread and butter here. These areas, however, have been expanded upon. Every area feels a lot larger and wider, providing multiple navigation routes and approaches to scenarios. There were several moments where I was genuinely surprised at how large these areas were, even when there appeared to be more or less a straight shot one could take to the next checkpoint. Requiem features an upgrade system similar to Innocence, in which you use tools and materials found throughout the environment to upgrade your equipment at workbenches scattered around the world. These upgrades give Amicia greater combat and resource gathering capabilities. New to Requiem is a skill system which boosts Amicia's abilities in 3 different areas according to how you play the game. These areas being stealth, combat, and alchemy. By committing actions that fall into these categories, such as sneaking past enemies, killing enemies outright with your weapons, or using alchemy to change the environment in order to kill an enemy, Amicia will raise her skill in that category and unlock greater capabilities. I found this system to be interesting in that it rewards the player further according to how they are choosing to play the game. I imagine some players won't like this, as one could argue that it sort of inhibits acquisition of other useful skills simply because the player did not choose to previously adopt that particular playstyle. Either way you cut it, overall, I never came across a scenario where I felt that I needed a particular skill in order to proceed through an area of the game. Fully maxing out your skills and equipment upgrades seems to be a task intended for the game's New Game Plus mode. Requiem features combat companions this time around during limited segments, adding more versatility to how combat is approached. Hugo acquires 2 abilities. One is a location system which uses the rats to identify enemy positions temporarily, and the other is the ability to straight up control the rats at his discretion. This led to some truly hilarious and satisfying moments taking down soldiers after having spent so much time trying to evade them. The enemy AI is fine, however, it's not going to win any awards here. When spotted, enemies will go full alert mode to seek you out, but unlike games such as, say, Metal Gear Solid 5, I rarely felt like enemies were intelligently and intuitively searching me out. It was always either too little or too much. The issues I mentioned at the beginning of this portion with gameplay actually don't have to do with the gameplay directly, but rather instead the game's length and pacing. Compared to Innocence, which clocked in at around 10 hours spanning 17 chapters, Requiem raises this to the 20-hour range, also with 17 chapters. Due to this, I believe much of the tightness and intricacy of the original is lost in Requiem, as most chapters are significantly longer, leaving me feeling like certain locations or plot segments have overstayed their welcome. While the gameplay itself is fun, it starts to wear out halfway through due to a sense of repetition and a general feeling of been there, done that, rinse and repeat. While I still enjoyed my time with Requiem and stick to my recommendation as it being a game you should experience, it is for sure too long and would have been better off trimming a couple of hours off and keeping the best parts of what was left remaining. As for who is this game for, I will say those who are a fan of the original and anyone who enjoys narrative-driven action games. Even with my stated gripes about the game's issues with length and pacing, there is enough meat here to walk away with a satisfied experience. The developers over at Asobo Studio have definitely stepped up their game with this entry, and I am curious to see what they come up with next.
There it is.
Well, thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel to get more content, and let me know in the comment section what your thoughts were on A Plague Tale Requiem. That's all I have for today. Till next time.